earlier about post-purchase, I want the ultimate low friction experience. And if I trust the retailer and trust the service they're giving me and know they're going to be all over me like a rash, price isn't my prime driver on the purchase of that vehicle.
Yeah,
I think
maybe
probably
not.
there's a piece, Paul. Sorry, Justin. I think there's a piece there, which is with more and more new entrants, brand loyalty is going to continue to dwindle. You talk
Yeah.
about younger generation, etc. This element of customer experience being a differentiator, I truly believe in, because we are spending so much on new acquisitions, new customers, and actually that element of if we can create true advocacy within a brand, within a dealership, within a touch point, then the amount of money you're able to effectively be able to turn around and save as a result of that, it just pays in its own very, very quickly. But we're very, very short-sighted by saying my margin's been cut. I've got to make sure I've got to cut my head count. I've got to do this. As part of some of those challenges, what seems to resolve is actually customer experience is the bit that's ignored, or the bit that's pushed to the side. Long time ago, you used to always get that example I said earlier, your vehicle's clean when it was returned for a service. I can't remember the last time I had my vehicle clean when I had it serviced. So those types of examples, I think, are getting weared away with the view of, right, we've got to cut costs, we've got to cut costs, we've got to cut costs. And with new entrants coming in, brand loyalty is dwindling. And I think we're going to end up in a piece where people are just going to try different things. And we're going to keep just fighting the getting new consumers.
Mm.
Who do you think's doing it good right now? Who's doing it well right now? If you were to pick a manufacturer, bearing in mind, I think a lot of it comes down to the franchise model, which I think sometimes reduces the standards. Sometimes, you look how Tesla came in and stuff like that, leading the way on the customer journey.
To be very honest, Wes, I'm gonna keep my powder dry. I'm not going to say a name.
No, I respect that. I respect that. Let's not alienate anyone today.
I go further and say, if we're honest, if we go back to some of those things we're saying it should feel like, I don't think any of them are particularly. This is part of the problem. It's not it's not this one isn't, and they are. There's not any. Maybe that's been overly hard. I've had some good experiences along the line that may have been down to the individual in that particular dealership or retailer that just went the extra mile
and
said, you know what, I'm prepared to just do this, and I built up a great relationship with them, and actually I went back and when I was ready to then trade into the next vehicle, I said, can we start the conversation again? How do we go? And it was like brilliant. Because he kind of remembered, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, right? Yeah. Have you thought about that? What can you do without? And he had that mutual trust early on, and maybe that's more the experience that then kept me back in that brand. Actually,
some sales people just get it; they get people.
Yeah, and I think that would have been my answer as well, because when you say which brand, if we had to choose a brand that was doing it really well, actually, I think I can't put my hand. In the old days, used to always hold Lexus up, but even Lexus, I've heard some challenging stories about recently as well. But actually, I think now it's down to the retailer rather than the brand. I would almost turn it around the other way. In my experience, there are certain brands who every retailer I've been to of that brand has been pretty rubbish. So I think there are brands that get it wrong consistently, and almost all of their retailers get it wrong as well because of the way the brand is managing the retailer relationship. There are other brands where the brand itself may or may not have a fantastic way of handling customers, but some of their retailers do it in an amazingly good way. So I think it's very much at the moment down to the retailer and how the retailer is handling the customer more so than the brand. I think sometimes that changes, particularly, some of the stuff that the brand does own, whether that's lead time, whether that's some of the post-purchase fault fixing and things like that. That comes down to the brand a little bit more because they have more control. But even then, we talk a lot about moments of truth in our world. Even then, it's the retailer who has the ability to deal with the moment of truth when something goes wrong. And if the retailer handles that well, most customers will live with that issue because of the way they're being handled by the retailer.
I think there's a piece, as long as they're not constrained by the brand, Paul.
Yeah.
So as long as there's not this element of, I agree with you. I've experienced it where some of those dealer groups do have constraints based on their group. They also, there's also situations where actually they're constrained by the brand's policies. It's interesting because I'm going to change my piece about the brand that I think is doing well, and I'm saying it with a caveat that says there is a feeling that they make you feel when you touch them. Okay, and that's also a piece of maybe in my time of life, I want to feel younger, I want to feel fitter, I want to feel more energetic. So these two brands hit into that space in my mind, and I think you can look at kind of that kind of the Mini experience, and also the Cupra. Those two brands seem to resonate with me, but when I reflect on it and think why, it's actually because when I touch, feel, and sense them, they make me feel younger. Now, that's just me as an individual thinking what's there. But I've also experienced it, going to, there's a new Porsche dealership not very miles away from where I live. And there's right next to a Bentley dealership. Now, that's also aspirational. You go in there, and that's back to the point of Paul saying it's a different type of experience. It's back to your element of a kind of a Waitrose and some of those other brands out there. So it's interesting what you say about what that piece. Do you?
But buy a Porsche and feed back to us how the experience was. I think we need to do some some product testing,
some shopping.
But interestingly, we know from our mutual acquaintances who have been through that experience that it wasn't great. There were certain parts of that experience, like the driving days and things like that, which were awesome, but there were parts of the sales experience and after sales experience which equally weren't awesome. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a high value brand gets it right either.
No, very true. But also your bars are much higher as well. So you're exactly.
It's your expectation. And I remember way back down when VW Group first bought Skoda. And that first generation of VW engineered Skodas came out, and they were surprising most customers because they were delivering, if you like, that higher level of capability product that they didn't expect originally from the brand. And I think it was JD Power at the time. The surveys for Skoda were coming out well positioned because expectations were down here, and the product and experience was delivering way above that. There is that element that goes into things as well. Maybe for some customers, I think. Your example, Paul, of there are some individual dealers of some brands that really do get it right, and within that, whereas as you said, some actual individual salespeople, after salespeople that completely get it right. I would say I've had back to the after sales experience. I've had a really good experience. So that horrible thing that every OEM dreads but has to legally comply with is notifying their customer if there's a product recall. Which immediately says there's a safety concern with the car, and that recall can be, it's not that urgent. The likelihood is low. We'll fix the thing on the next service, or it's actually this is safety critical. We need your car back in as quickly as possible so that we're replacing the part, updating it, whatever it might be. But we're minimizing the risk, we're minimizing the impact to the customer. I've had experiences where that has been seamless and almost so there's a problem, but the way that brand have informed me, the dealer already knew what to do, booked me in, dealt with it, and it was like I was none the wiser. Didn't really know what the safety problem was, But I thought, you know what? My confidence is restored. They've looked after me. It's all been done and dusted. There are others where I go back to this effort thing again, where something isn't quite right, but you've had to make all the effort in terms of there's a recall, please contact your retailer to book it in for a service. It's like, say you book it in for a service. Well, I need my car every day. Well, okay. Well, we could book it in, but can you leave it with us? Well, no, I need it every day. Oh, okay. Well, we could arrange for your car to be picked up from you. Yeah, but what do I do in the meantime? Oh, well, we could arrange for a courtesy car to be delivered for, well, we've got it to do work. Well, when can you do that? Oh, in a couple of months' time. Oh, right. So in the meantime, how long am I dealing with this kind of recall issue?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but not a lot from where that kind of, yeah, you're putting in all the effort where it could be so much easier. And I do come back to your point. It's complex, but there are examples where that complexity is removed because they've just focused on making it easy for the customer.
And sometimes the industry just is so good at tripping up over its own bootlaces. To exactly that point. Previous vehicle to this one, I had a amber warning light come up on the dash, and in the world of connected car, it was really clever. It pinged whoever and I had a phone call from my local appointed service desk, retailer, and I was really quite impressed. It was like, Mr. Major, this is XYZ dealership here. We've noticed that you've had an orange warning light come up on your vehicle. Would you like us to book it in and sort that out for you? Yeah, absolutely. Would love you to do that. Thank you for calling me. When can you do it? Our first available is 6 weeks' time. Hang on a minute. You've just rung me to tell me I've got a safety issue with my car and created a great potential customer moment.
Yeah.
And then you've just ruined it by telling me you can't see me for 6 weeks. So even though it's a safety issue, I have to drive the vehicle for 6 weeks because you've got no capacity in your workshop to do anything about it. You'd have been better not to ring me in the first place, to be fair.
Yeah.
Just madness.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been really super interesting. I'm going to ask you one final question, and I'll ask it to myself and then answer it so you guys have got a bit of time to think about it. And then it'd be rude not to talk about change when, we're change makers. So if I had a rich uncle and they just said, "Oh, right, I've got a dealership, it's a car manufacturer, I'm gifting it to you, and you are now the CEO, what would you go and change?" For me, and listening to you guys and what we've discussed today in terms of how you can improve the customer journey, I think it's multifaceted. There's lots of different ways, and I think for me, I think you could perhaps use the engagement that may be online, really work with your retailers around a more individual approach to the buying process, create more access so that people can feel more confident about the product they're buying rather than buyer's regret. So if I was going to try and change things, I'd probably look at what's the key values of the business. What do we want people to say about us as a company? That and it could be around like being looked after, being the customer first type approach. If I can instill that into the organization across from supply chains to the manufacturers to the shop floor, as they say, or the sales floor, perhaps that mindset, those behaviors, that belief system as to this is how we're measuring success might change the experience for our customers, may build different brands. That would be, if I was going to try and do everything, if I was sat at the perch, that's what I would try and influence is those behaviors. Just quickly, Justin, I'm your uncle. I'm Uncle Wes. I've just gifted you a lovely car brand. You can do whatever you like. What are you going to do to make the customer journey better? Customer experience.
So, I come back a little bit on what Jason said before. In a world where choice is becoming greater and greater, so it's eroding that maybe laziness that car brands have had in the past of saying, well, they've always bought from us, so they'll come back. You're talking about what are you doing to make that customer as sticky as possible? I use the example actually of a family-run restaurant. So a family-run restaurant where they're not attached to a hotel, they're not attached to a big brand. If you go to that restaurant and don't have a great experience, you won't go back. And you'll probably tell a few of your friends, I wouldn't go there. And they can do nothing about that. Where you're a big franchise restaurant, so there's loads of them around, that actually the skin in the game for the people working in that business is not the same, because they may not have a job if that restaurant closes, but yeah, they'll go and get a job somewhere else. It's not, the reputation of that brand is just not on that outlet. Whereas a family run restaurant, it's all about how good that experience is that keeps clientele coming back. Effectively, I would look to treat that same approach in a car retailer to do exactly the same. Own every customer experience like you want them to just keep coming back to you time and time again, and they tell all their friends. And so all the, I guess, incentivization, all the kind of support is focused on allowing that to happen with every customer. So it creates that equivalent of the family-run restaurant.
Cool. That sounds really good.
Sense?
You made me think, actually, you could have like a customer loyalty scheme. If you have their brand, the stock price goes up, you get a reward or something, you get a free petrol. Anyway, just a thought. Jason, what would you do, sir? Uncle Wes has just sorted you out. You can go and do whatever you like now. What are you going to go and do to improve the customer experience?
Well, thank you, Uncle Wes. I have to be honest, I appreciate the Friday afternoon offer of this lovely retail organisation. There's a couple of bits that I think through, and back to that element of it's easy pointing the finger, and I honestly believe that there are kind of 90%. The issue isn't dealerships, yeah. So that element of customer experience. So the answer I'm going to give, I'm going to just kind of caveat a little bit by that. I can remember a couple of bits of advice that I've been shared. And I think the first one is it's all got to come down to that kind of culture piece and how you want to run that business and how you lead that business. And in my view, I think there'd be, give people the autonomy to deal things that happen in front of them, not a playbook. Would be mine. Obviously, there's piece where you've got to deal, you want to make money, fully get that. The piece that kind of Justin said, I think that example of the family-run organisation, my example would be, look, treat it as your own. I remember, when I started kind of my career, my dad said to me, he said, you want to treat that money as if it's your own, son, which often finds that I don't spend a penny on what I'm trying to deliver or anything else. But there is a bit as part of that. I think that means a real lot. And I think if you can engender that type of culture in the organisation, nobody comes to work to do a poor job. I don't know anybody that goes to work to do a poor job. So give people the element, say, right, okay, I trust you. You're going to deal with those people walking through that door in the best possible way you can do. Crack on. And how can I help you? And that's how I deal with it. I would deal with it as part of kind of any organization, if you want the truth. It doesn't have to be a manufacturer, a dealership, everything else. But I think actually, Wes, what I'd do is I'd take your money and say, I'm going to go and buy a golf course. Thank you very much, Wes. I'm going to improve my handicap.
That's a great idea. I tell you what, I'll give you both. I'm that generous. Let's go buy a golf course, and we'll have some cars to boot. Pun the pun. So culture, leadership, autonomy, family behaviors. Right. So we can see there's three of us that are all there. Paul's probably, I'm going to throw it out there. He's going to go all process and digital. I'm only joking. Yeah. Paul, what would you do?
No, I think it's all in that space. For me, it's all about the customer experience. If you're selling anything, actually, even low value items, it's still about the customer experience. You just maybe have an adapted customer experience that works for the fact people are buying commodity goods. But when you're buying high value goods, it's even more so about the customer experience. So for me, I think the thing that I would do, whether I was a brand or a retailer, is I would make sure I really understood what the customer experience needed to be from the customer's perspective, not from my perspective as the retailer or the OEM. So back to my piece, make it a demand-driven business, not a supply-driven business. Understand what your customer really wants and provide that, but provide it, and this is my bias, through a human experience. Because at the end of the day, experience is 80%, 90% based on the interaction between two human beings. And you have to be able to provide that experience in that human way for it to be something that the customer remembers. And I think if I could have a second wish to what Justin was saying, I would actually, whether I was a retailer or an OEM, I would change every incentive program and remuneration program in the business to one that was built on how many repeat customers have I gained. So at the moment, we incentivize everybody on individual unit sales. I'd actually look at my historical sales and say, you know what, out of the 1,000 customers I've had this year, how many had I sold to previously? Oh, 100 of them. I've got 10% repeat business. And I would incentivize everybody on how that number changed, and on nothing else probably, actually, because I believe that that repeat business measure is the measure of the customer experience. And we spend so much time pontificating about stuff and how we measure this and how we measure that and all these different surveys we send out and everything. And actually, ultimately, the best measure is, did they come back and buy another one from me? Which is a back to your family restaurant analogy.
I'd say it'd probably go for car sales in general. If you got that experience, you trust the business, because there's so much stigma to it. It's such a bad experience, and I've had a lot of bad experience myself. I'm like, if I had a really good experience and I was well looked after, I know that's the first place I'd go for a car, and it could be a Fiat. No offense to a Fiat 500, I'd be convincing myself that I need to buy that Fiat 500 just because I like the garage.
You want that
I trust
experience.
them. They've won me as a customer, and the car is secondary if it was at that point. So cool. So we're all aligned. It's about making it individual to the focus around the people, not the process, not the any digital element. It's really centered around the human side of things. So we are unanimous. That's probably the big drop. So I appreciate everybody jumping on this and exploring our first subject. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been interesting.